Well, took you long enough.
Dear fellow Star Wars fans, what the do you want? No, seriously, what do you want from today's Star Wars shows? Let me know in the comments because frankly, I'm confused. And judging from your responses to the Obi-Wan Kenobi limited series, we'll see about that, so are you. Starting with episode 1, opinions dripping with dissatisfaction and disappointment came flying across the dune sea of social media. As the season progressed, so did the screeches of discontent pommeling my senses, interrupting many an afternoon snooze. Not to my surprise, the damning of the show continued through its completion. Perhaps I hyperbolize, but the sizable outcry against Obi-Wan Kenobi, even as the show was only in early episodes, seemed premature at best and predetermined at worst. I will return to this thesis later. First, I must play master to the Padawans in the Star Wars fandom and set aright these misconceptions about the series Obi-Wan Kenobi. The primary complaint, and one that, if true, fundamentally destabilizes the show, is that the character on screen is not Obi-Wan Kenobi. We see this Kenobi as being separated from the Force, submerged in the mundane. He steals, doesn't challenge the injustice of a foreman cheating another man his wages.
It's only half. Please, I have a family.
One more word, I take it all.
He denies aid to a fellow fugitive Jedi.
You have to help me.
You want my help? Take this. Walk into the middle of the desert and bury it in the ground. Stay hidden. Live a normal life.
Where is the core Kenobi mercy and kindness? The only similarity between this Kenobi and the Kenobi of Star Wars A New Hope is his loyalty to watching over Luke. Otherwise, they are two different men. Or so the argument goes. Yes, I agree these are two different men, but they are, in fact, the same Obi-Wan Kenobi. Remember, the Obi-Wan we left at the end of Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, is also not the same Kenobi we know in A New Hope. Therefore, there must be at least one Kenobi in the middle to bridge these 2 points in the character's life. Behold, Kenobi of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. This characterization makes sense as a logical extension from where we last saw Kenobi in Episode 3. At the end of that film, he is a broken man, and let us not mince words. He still thinks he has killed his best friend, who he first watched convert to the dark side. Obi witnessed the slaughter of his entire surrogate family by soldiers with whom he once fought side by side. The Republic, for which he stood and engaged in a prolonged war, has collapsed under the influence of his mortal enemy, the Sith. It is not an understatement to say this man has lost everything. Not to mention, the malice of the entire Empire continues to hunt him persistently. And to hide from them, he's had to sublimate the very attributes which make him a Jedi, such as the use of the Force, to blend into society around him. Considering all these factors, it makes sense that we see a different Kenobi, but he is not a false Kenobi as some maintain. Rather, he is a New Hope Kenobi in the making. With regards to his relationship with the Force, clearly Kenobi does not perceive himself as divorced from the Force. It's just a trial separation. He isn't Catholic, but they're staying together, for the twins. In all seriousness, Kenobi still keeps in contact with the Force and tries to summon the Force ghost of Master Qui-Gon Jinn. However, events at the end of Episode 3 have definitely left him out of balance with the Force, as evidenced by his seeming lack of success. As to refusing to help the young Jedi, he did tell him exactly what to do to survive in the age of the Empire. Obi-Wan gave the Jedi help. It just wasn't the help he wanted, or maybe you wanted to hear. But it is entirely in keeping with this traumatized character who has lost everything and is just trying to survive. Additionally, Kenobi hasn't lost all his kindness. He steals so he can feed his Eope. He saved his money to buy Luke a toy. That Kenobi core is still there.
Lola! You fixed her. Thank you.
It is simply more focused on the immediate needs of the now. So he's buried himself in the obscurity of migrant work on the armpit world of Tatooine because he may be a wanted man, but he is a wanted man with a mission.
We're on a mission from God.
To protect the boy Luke by whatever means he can. And it is dedication to protecting the children of Anakin Skywalker that will ultimately rebuild this Obi-Wan Kenobi into the wise, wry-humored monk we know so well. A many-layered subsequent objection from the peanut gallery was that this wasn't the story about Obi-Wan Kenobi we wanted. He's playing second fiddle in his own show. We want smarter storytelling. Heavy, heavy sigh. I'm sorry, but answering this one took me to new levels of stupid. What story did you expect for Obi? One man, alone, in a desert for 19 years? Hell, even the Bible knew that was too boring. Did you really want a series of Obi-Wan puttering around his hut, muttering to himself, trying to summon Qui-Gon's ghost with Qui-Gon's eventual appearance being the climax? If that's the case, you're just asking for a show filled with flashbacks, and we know how contentious those are these days. The argument that Obi-Wan is upstaged in his own show by 10-year-old Princess Leia doesn't hold up under scrutiny either. Leia, played by Vivian Lyra Blair, is not the protagonist of the show. Obi-Wan is. From episode to episode, Kenobi remains the hero who instigates action, formulates plans, comes up with ideas, and solves the mystery. Listen to the verbs. While Leia does face down a villain and untangle some sabotage, she is not the initiator, unlike Kenobi, who is the driving force of the narrative. In fairness, the wee Leia deserved some hype because she is a legitimately talented child actor who you don't want to punt through the uprights after 10 seconds. Plus, Ewan McGregor and Vivian Lyra Blair had great chemistry between their characters on screen. Ultimately, though, Obi-Wan held the reins with regards to the story, not Leia. As for smarter storytelling, allow me to let you in on a little secret. Complicated storytelling isn't necessarily smart, and just because a story is simple doesn't make it unintelligent. The Kenobi series is a strong example of simple, smart storytelling. Episodes proceeded logically from one to the next, and by the conclusion, all storylines had resolved with no arcs flapping in the breeze or forgotten somewhere along the way, with writers praying to God that nobody was paying that close of attention. Even the twists were grounded in preceding narrative. This is the basis for the difference in experience between that of understanding and the fuck of utter confusion. What's more, the writers of this story necessarily put forethought in this series, sequel trilogy, I'm looking at you, as demonstrated by the creative niche they found to tell their story without clobbering canon. They put two unknowns together, Obi-Wan's years in the desert and Leia's childhood, and colored in a small but meaningful gap in the Star Wars legend.
We don't make mistakes. We have happy accidents.
The most manufactured source of hoopla for the Obi-Wan series concerns the series-specific antagonist third sister, or Reva, played by Moses Ingram. Alas, before I move any further, according to Thumbs, my partner in crime and cultural weather vane par excellence, I must pause here and address a bit of an online kerfuffle that occurred. This catfight began with some folks criticizing Ingram's acting. This triggered Disney to swoop in to defend their baby Moses Ingram by labeling any who dare criticize her acting in any way as racist, sexist, and must-eat babies.
Blah, 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 blah.
I tend to think Disney anticipated the whole scenario, concocting a made-to-order virtue signal to end all virtue signals that would act as their red carpet for their suitably diverse villain. I can practically see the peace signs, squint-eyed smiles, and warm milk cheers of inclusivity. Now, to get any meaningful analysis of Moses Ingram's performance or her character, Reva, one must first shovel aside these layers of bluster
That is one big pile of shit.
And baseless accusations Disney let fly and actually look at the source material. Now, where was I? Oh yes, I did not see what all the flying fur was about. Reviewers complained that Ingram's portrayal was overpowered, that she came on too strong way too fast. For me, the character was a second-string baddie, the acting commensurate with the level of development given to Ingram's character, an observation which is not the same as saying Ingram's acting was flawed. There's a big difference. Yes, the greatest actors can take one of my Tootsie Rolls as material and make it sound like Shakespeare, but most engaged in the craft are only as good as the script they are provided. Just like you need a good recipe to make good food, a well-written script is required for a well-acted character. I don't find this to be that damning of a critique, but I digress. What was more baffling about the Reva rage was that people expected her to be some subtle, diabolical nemesis for Obi-Wan, when Obi-Wan's nemesis was always supposed to be Darth Vader.
He was wise to use you against me.
That arc carries on into the original trilogy.
Meet again at last. The circle is now complete. When I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master.
Only a master of evil, Darth.
Thus far, Reva exists only within this Kenobi side story. As such, the breadth of her character should not outsize the show. Rather, she should be shaped to be contained within it, which is something the writers accomplished, concluding Reva's arc in the final episode. Truthfully, I hope Reva's story stays put. Writers did not grant Reva full redemption, which for me means ending her arc in the net positive. A hard thing to do when you torture children, if you ask me. Rather, they did something more believable, which is to bring her back to net zero and give her the choice of whether to sink back down or lift herself further up.
Who you become now, that is up to you.
Leaving her on the cusp of that decision gives her finale a satisfying sense of hopeful potential that can be left in that unresolved state. Because, as I mentioned before, Reva doesn't appear beyond this show, and frankly, there's no reason for her to do so. Her backstory, her motivation, all serve to move the plot of Kenobi forward, and now that it has concluded, Reva's limited dimensions apply to no other purpose. Well, since I skewered anything to do with their baby Moses saved from the waters of the Nile Ingram, it's to the roasters of Gomorrah with me. Hey, you're here too? That mouse hates everybody. It's a small world after all on Disney's hit list. It's a small world after all. Getting back to the matter at hand, I call the uproar over Reva manufactured because that's exactly how it felt. Poorly put together, mindlessly repeated, and made in China. Moreover, it seemed like reviewers were constructing negative reactions from faulty materials just to make a negative reaction, not from any genuine impression. Permit me to return to my earlier statements. A certain fraction of the review-generating sector appears to get off on inflaming their audience's agita by automatically giving new material, Star Wars or otherwise, a negative review. I get it. Negativity gets clicks and views, especially in the current in vogue of cynicism. But if all creator ever turns out is negative responses, they will eventually lose their credibility because the audience will realize that nothing satisfies you and that your reviews aren't really reviews, just negativity for its own sake. A more insidious development that happens when someone only focuses on what's wrong with the show is they start only seeing errors and missteps and overlook anything positive the show might have to offer. It's a form of confirmation bias. I know you consider yourselves critics, so you think it's your job to be critical, when really your job is to think critically and respond. Look, I'm no stranger to blasting a show, especially a Disney Star Wars monstrosity. But if it's good, I'm going to say it's good. And this was good. Not flawless, but enjoyable. Aside from the strengths I've already highlighted, the series featured robust secondary characters, such as Tala.
Is there a problem?
This isn't your sector. I can't let you through.
And you are?
I am the lead security on this level.
Then I'm your commanding officer, and you will address me as Sir.
Yes, sir, of course, but...
Perhaps I should just inform the Grand Inquisitor of your insolence. I'm here with classified intelligence. Do you know what classified means?
Yes, sir.
Why am I wasting my breath on you?
Yes, sir. Of course.
And Haja.
Haja, what are you doing here?
I had nowhere else to go. Right after I saw you, I got into a fight with that scary Lady Inquisitor. Now I'm wanted by the Empire. But now I know what it feels like being a real Jedi. It's not easy. This place is a good business opportunity, though.
Meaningful cinematography. That dual Bacta tank scene comes to mind. And just enough hat tips to classic Star Wars to make the show feel integrated into the cinematic universe without feeling like fan service. And that final duel. My fur was standing on end the entire time, which says a lot. The director kept the audience emotionally engaged throughout the fight, unlike the duel at the end of Episode 3 when the tension fizzled by minute 5. Moreover, the scene with Darth Anakin, when half his face was revealed from under the mask, and he spoke with a merging Vader-Anakin voice.
You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. I did.
Not only did Hayden Christensen finally get to flex his true acting ability, but Vader came alive in a unique way that captured how the Jedi Anakin was truly consumed by the Dark Lord Vader. In conclusion, dear Star Wars fans, figure out what it is you want, because I know what I want. More thoughtful shows with solid storytelling like this. It doesn't have to be part of the Skywalker arc, but Obi-Wan Kenobi shows that Disney Star Wars is not hopelessly inept when it comes to the franchise. Cautious optimism may be warranted. Hugs and kisses, Sci-Fi Cat.
Responsibility, Owen.
Well, I'm his uncle.
We talked about this. When the time comes, he must be trained.
Like you trained his father?